Righty. So thanks everybody for coming out to this town hall. The town hall really tonight is going to be focused on the Marine Terminal Master Plan and the proposal for a new temporary warehouse on the Marine Terminal and how those two things fit together. Commissioner Tong in particular asked that we have this town hall. So I just a couple of housekeeping things and we'll talk about how this is going to go. But first I wanted to say Commissioner Tong is on her way, reiterate that. And let you know that Commissioners Harding and Vasavada were unable to be here today. They both had pre-existing commitments out of town. So they would have loved to be here, and we're recording it in part so they can see it afterwards. There's a sign-up sheet in the back if you want to sign up, and then we'll make sure we have you on the list to ask questions or come forward and have your time at the mic. We also have comment cards. If people want to ask a question without identifying themselves, you're free to do it that way. We're going to, as I indicated, there's going to be a time limit for your time with the microphone. And so we'll start a clock for 5 minutes, and we want to give you a chance to engage however you want to engage for those 5 minutes. And then we'll go on to the next person. And again, if we do kind of have a chance where everybody gets their one time to speak and there's lots of time left, then we'll have opportunities for folks to come up and speak again. Let's see, if people online want to ask a question, we ask that you simply raise your hand and you'll get into a queue. And we will let you know when it's your turn and you can unmute and feel free to engage. And then this is accessible via Zoom and YouTube Live, and it's going to be recorded and posted on our website at a later date. And we're going to try to be respectful of everybody's time and end it right at 7 p.m. I'm going to give a brief presentation because I understand there's a lot of questions just about the background. What is the master plan? What is the proposal for the temporary warehouse? So I'm just going to go through those, and I'm going to talk about why the staff's recommendation is that the recommendation to the commission is that we move forward with this, and then we'll just open it up for folks to provide their feedback and input. So I'm going to talk first about the Peninsula Integrated Master Plan. Then talk about the proposed temporary warehouse and the business case for it. And then we'll talk about how the warehouse fits into the master plan. And also, actually, before we get started, I want to indicate we've got a couple of our ACE staff members here. We've got Ashim Yilmaz, who is our Marine Terminal Senior Manager, and we have James Summers, who is our Capital Projects / Public Works Senior Manager. And they've been working on this project as well, and they have a lot of the details for folks who might have detailed questions. Okay, so back to the presentation. Peninsula Master Planning, what is it? So the port has the equivalent of a comprehensive plan. It's called the Comprehensive Scheme of Harbor Improvements. That's dictated by the statute governing port authorities, but it essentially is equivalent to a comprehensive plan. It talks about all the port-owned properties and what the uses, the allowed uses are on those properties. The port also has accompanying development guidelines. So if you're going to develop on any given set of properties, it talks about what the development should look like for that. So this Peninsula Master Plan is essentially a sub-plan. It would be like a sub-area plan. So we're looking very specifically only at a specific portion of port-owned properties. The purpose is to identify the long-term vision for future land uses on the peninsula. And what it does, it provides guidance for decision-making on development proposals as we move into the future. It builds off of the public input that the port got through Vision 2050 and Destination Waterfront. And it also, we're trying to integrate the Butt Inlet cleanup to see if there are efficiencies that can be gained as we do the cleanup. And we're really looking to find ways to give the community amenities that they would like to see out on the peninsula and also prioritize environmental stewardship. So this is the area for the master plan. It's the area within the dotted line. That's what we're looking at doing a master plan for. It incorporates the Swantown Boatworks, Swantown Marina, the Marine Terminal, and then the North Point area. The blue line is simply sort of a context area and an area where we have historically done some habitat restoration projects, and there may be opportunities to do more. And the area inside the red is areas where we really want to be coordinating with, in particular, the city of Olympia on sea level rise issues, because that's the area of downtown that is heavily impacted when it comes to sea level rise. But in terms of what's inside the yellow dotted lines, the two business lines that are part of that are the Marine Terminal and then also Swantown Marina and Boatworks. And those will be looked at for how we wanna, what the future land uses will be. So on to the proposed temporary warehouse. So our existing 76,000 square foot warehouse was built in 1983. It's only 175 feet from the water line, and it's a unique asset amongst ports in the region. Very few ports have a warehouse that is this close to the berth, and it's an amazing asset. This is hard to read, but this is the financials for the marine terminal in terms of revenue in particular from 2014 through 2020, August of 2024. And what we wanted to show with this is through, I guess for a long time, as folks are aware, the primary tenant and operations that went through our marine terminal was warehouser and export of logs. And we recognize that that is a business model that is limited in terms of its potential for revenue generation. And so when we got Option on board in 2022, you can see the revenue jumped up significantly. And that's in large part because Option is very well plugged into the break bulk community and what kind of shipping opportunities there are. And also in part because he recognized the value of the asset of the warehouse and looked in particular for cargo that could use that. And in 2023, you can see on the income levels before depreciation, the income went up significantly, and that's when we got the bulk paper pulp cargo. Okay, saying that right? And it is a high revenue generator, and it's a company that has done business for a very long time, and in particular, they have shipped things through Philadelphia for 14 years now, and have done nothing but increase the business through there. So we were very fortunate to get them. Option and his team have done an amazing job of providing excellent customer service to them, and that's why they prefer our port to other ports and would like to actually grow opportunities here. So our existing warehouse capacity limits the amount of revenue that we can generate from it. Our warehouse has been full of this paper pulp, and the customer wants additional capacity. That capacity can generate significant additional revenue right away. And it will also provide opportunities for other customers. I think an important thing to note is we've turned away cargo that has been seeking space in a warehouse because our warehouse has been full of this bulk paper cargo. So in terms of the details of what the warehouse look like, what is it? What are we talking about? The total cost is $4 million. We're looking at a 70,000 square foot space. The source would be unrestricted cash reserves, which is important to note that historically the port has invested in capital improvements by going into debt. And that has saddled the port with some serious bond debt repayments every year. And this is an opportunity to generate significant revenue without going into additional debt. The break-even period for this is 3 to 5 years, and I have a graphic that shows that. The material of the warehouse is a ripstop fabric. It'll be over a metal frame, and it'll be built on a 4 to 6 inch concrete pad. We won't know exactly the thickness until we get into the full design of the structure. This is the basic footprint of where the temporary warehouse would be. It would be adjacent to the current one on the east side, on the opposite side of the rail line. So the thinking is that we'd be able to take advantage of the rail line for any cargoes that came into us or exited the terminal by rail. This is a depiction of a similar facility, but from the company that makes these. And that's essentially what the structure would look like. So this is the payback projection, the projected return on investment. So I know there's been questions about what happens if this customer doesn't stick around. They have committed to stick around through a certain amount of cargo, and that's depicted on this slide as well. So the red line is the $4 million cost. The blue line is if the customer stays and expands their use of our warehouse spaces the way we anticipate. And that shows the return on investment within just a couple of years. Even if the customer were to leave after the amount of cargo that they've committed to, we would still have a 5-year return on investment using conservative assumptions. And Option can speak a little bit more about the assumptions he made in this, putting together this business case. So how does the warehouse fit in the master plan? So the master plan is developing the long-term vision for future uses in the marine terminal. But we currently have contracts for operations out on the marine terminal through 2032. Our contracts with Weyerhaeuser are anticipated to extend through 2032. If a decision is made for non-industrial uses out on the marine terminal, it'll still take time to make that transition. So there's federal grants we'll need to unwind. There's other things that'll need to happen in order for us to abandon using the marine terminal for that purpose. And while if we were to make that transition, if the Port Commission decided to do that, we'd like to generate as much revenue as we can in that time period while it's winding down. So this is more of the rationale for why the staff is recommending to the commission that we think this is a good idea. The warehouse will pay for itself in 3 to 5 years and be capable of generating revenue long after that if we maintain a marine terminal. The port needs to generate more revenue for all of the initiatives and priorities we have. There are things, amenities that folks have said they want to see out on the Port Peninsula. We need to find a way to pay for that. Things like upgrades to the Billy Frank Jr. Trail. People have talked about wanting an amphitheater. We want to do things like expand the small cities program, and all of that. We need revenue to be able to do that. And then if ultimately the terminal transitions to non-industrial uses, the warehouse can be taken down. It would cost roughly $450,000 to take it down. Or it could be repurposed. It could be repurposed to something like a sports facility. The manufacturer who makes these warehouses also makes similarly constructed sports facilities. So if that was the kind of alternative use that folks wanted to see out in there, this could be repurposed for that. So did we consider waiting to do this until after the master plan was completed? We did. The challenge is the customer needs additional capacity by March or April.
Close to May.
Close to May of next year. And this is break bulk cargo is a very competitive sector. And if we were not able to provide that additional capacity, there's a risk that they would go to someone else to find additional capacity. And then there's always a risk that we would lose the customer entirely if that turned out to be an alternative that made more sense for them, because it's easier for a shipper to go to only one port and not to 2 ports. So did we consider not building it? Yes, absolutely. But again, it's the same challenge. If our customer really needs that additional capacity and we can't provide it, we run the risk of losing the customer entirely and losing a very profitable revenue stream. And did we consider how it fits in the master planning? We absolutely did. But again, what we're thinking about is even if a future use of the marine terminal is determined to be different than its current industrial use, we still would like to be generating revenue during the time period it takes to wind that down and make that transition. So in conclusion, we recognize this request to the commission. It's a big dollar request. It's coming early in the master planning process. But we were presented, or I guess Afshin and his team presented us with the current revenue generating opportunity. And this is the only revenue generating capital project in our capital project list for this year. It's an opportunity that is compatible with whatever is the outcome of the master plan. In the meantime, it allows us to generate potentially significant revenue, and it supports Afshin and the marine terminal staff who are doing an amazing job trying to find ways to make the marine terminal profitable right now, regardless of its long-term future use. So that is it. And we can turn to opening up the mic. So I think first up is Carla Wolfsburg.
Will you be talking back to us, or is it just?
Sure. We can answer. Yeah, if you got questions and things, sure.
Hi, so my name is Carla Wolfsburg, and thank you for having this town hall. I hope it's the first of many that we can enjoy hearing from you and have a conversation. So one thing that I think would have been very helpful for all of us, at least for me, to prepare for this would be to have had that information that you just presented, Alex, in writing, so that we could really think about it and think about or good questions for it. One thing that has always been on my mind, and perhaps this can be addressed tonight, is that there's this sort of vague notion that there's a commitment from Suzano. What kind of commitment is that? Is that in writing? Because if they decide to pull out in 6 months, for one reason or another, and there's no assurance that they're going to stick around, where does that leave the port, having just invested $4 million? And also, I read your cover memo, Offseen, in the agenda for next Tuesday. And you said that that Suzano also, it's dependent on whether the mills will still buy from them. Do they have a commitment in writing that the mills will still be buying from them for the next 5 years, or whatever I think it's 5 years that you're projecting that this needs to be continuing in order to pay off? Those are things I'd like to hear back from you. And I also wondered, there were a couple of other things. So I guess I have mainly this 5-year issue is another thing that I'd like to find out about. Is 5 years really the cutoff for being able to sustain this cost for the port and, well, it's the public. And the other thing that I was really wondering about, you mentioned the master plan. In the master plan, my understanding is that the marine terminal itself will be looked at, and perhaps you address this just a little bit. If we are also going to be looking at the marine terminal and its future, it seems to me that this is premature because we haven't completed the master plan, and the master plan will be finished in fall of 2025. Is that correct? So, what if, you say it's temporary, it can be taken down, it can be surplused. Well, what is it? Where does it go? I mean, is it just going to be sitting around and someone has to buy it? Or will it be, if the master plan doesn't include a large warehouse, a 70,000 square warehouse on the Port Peninsula, where will this thing go? Will it end up like the crane, sitting around waiting for a buyer? Those are my questions. So I hope that perhaps we can get some answers for that. That would be really, really helpful. And I would appreciate it, again, having in advance some of the detail that you talked about today. And that would be really helpful. In fact, it's on your action calendar, which to me says you're going to be voting on this next Tuesday. Is that correct? So I think it's really time for all of us to have something in writing, particularly about the commitment from Suzano, and also if they have a commitment with the mills. So thank you very much.
I can answer the second question, or the question about the master plan and how it fits in. Again, absolutely the marine terminal is part of the master planning process. If the outcome of that is a decision by the commission to change the use of the marine terminal, the 66 acres, to something else, it will take a while. Number one, Weyerhaeuser has a lease there through 2032. And number two, there's a lot of things that we need to unwind. And things like things were paid for by federal grants out there. We need to actually figure out how much we'd have to repay the federal government for some of those grants. Because if you decide to sell something or stop using it that was paid for by federal grant money, before the end of its useful life, the federal government says you need to pay them back for essentially the value of that remaining useful life. So there's a lot to figure out. And so during that time period, it makes sense to us to continue to generate revenue from the marine terminal until that use is finally terminated and it's transitioned over to something else. So that's how it's compatible with the master plan. Even if the marine terminal ultimately is something else, in the meantime, we can generate revenue from this and it could be taken down. And again, you're correct that if we decided that there was no further need for that warehouse, we would try to sell it. We would try to surplus it and sell it to someone else. And I know people are concerned that this is a second crane, but I think a big difference here is we have an existing demand for this particular capital asset, and we didn't for the mobile harbor crane. And so we really want to be able to take advantage of that need and try to fulfill that need. And I don't know, Afshin, do you feel comfortable talking about Suzano and the commitment?
Absolutely. Those are great questions, and I appreciate it because you're right. They do not have Suzano doesn't have, apparently that's how the paper industry works. They do not do long-term agreements with these customers. So, for example, they've been supplying GP mills for a long time, but they've been railing it from the south. And every time the market prices come out in a certain time of the year, and they do mostly a year long, a certain tonnage commitment. So and because of that, our commitment that you were asking is based on that. So they have a year commitment with GP, and as a commercial corporation, of course, they do not know that if they're going to sell, but they know that it's been going very well, and they will keep on selling, and they're running. It's not only one mill that they're kind of diversified. It's not only one company that they are supplying. There's a few other companies, and they're aggressively trying to find other customers. And this is the largest paper pulp producer in the world, and they have been very successful in the more crowded part of our country on the Eastport, and they have been trying to establish here for a long time. So long story cut short, they've got a 1-year commitment each time since they started with us, basically in 2023. They do a year agreement. They've got this much tonnage, and they set their schedule all the way until the end of that contract. So right now, the tonnage commitment that would almost pay for half of the warehouse is with us, and it is going to be in writing. Right now, we are going back and forth about certain things that we're going to put in the writing, and I will get to that later. While we are working on this letter, not just for the warehouse commitment, it's already there for at least that amount of time, but I feel like it's going to be more, especially if we build the capacity. It's going to continue. It has been a very good service. It is very expensive for a company like that to come and establish in the most expensive part of the country to do business. And they have been trying it. They failed it before, and it costed them a lot of money. And most importantly, they pay a lot of attention to their customers, because it's a consumer product, constant demand, recession-proof almost, and they want to make sure there's excellent customer service and on-demand delivery, and we have been doing a great job. So I feel like we are working like a team with them, and they will continue to expand. So their commitment, we are working on that letter. We have some details to put in there, because we have some other uses for that letter regarding employment in the terminal. And that will be done soon. We're not going to start doing anything before we get that commitment in writing. But they have already, we have already agreed on doing this with the company.
Okay, thank you. But I would just ask the commission then, should it not be postponed, your decision, your action item, until that commitment is there? And it's only for 1 year, correct?
It's not a year. We wanted to structure it with tonnage. Basically, our revenues are pretty much just like based on their revenues are based on a certain amount of tonnage. So our commitment is with their certain amount of tonnage that they're going to bring to us, and not to another port, to bring us that much revenue, basically.
And it's up to the commission as to whether they want to postpone it. I think the reason why we really wanted to move forward with it now is we are running out of time in order to be able to provide the capacity on the timeline that our customer needs. And it takes time to design, permit, construct. So.
I will say to your first point, Carla, we will be taking public comment on Monday here as well as online, or Tuesday, I should say, at our meeting. Anything else you think of between now and then?
Hey, so do we have someone online who wants to?
I don't see any raised hands at the moment.
All right. That we did get a question. Out is the master plan building in the 2050 or 2100 sea level rise flood zone that is forecasted, and if so, why? I think that is what is currently being analyzed as part of the master planning process, is looking at what those future forecasts are and whether and how we should be building, and or whether and how we should be putting in some kind of climate resilience measures in there. So the answer is we do not know yet if we're going to be planning for building in the zone, and that will be coming out as part of the master planning process. Okay, next up on the list, Janine Lindsay.
Hi. Um, there's so many things about this that bothers me. And I'm hearing a lot of them, just being talked about amongst you. First of all, I'm wondering if the commissioners have asked lots of questions about this already. You have an action item on this $1 million being released next week, and you don't have a contract. I wouldn't even think this would come up as an action item for a $1 million appropriation until you had a contract. Um, I, we apparently are going into a time of volatile market right now. We're going to be having a new president who has threatened tariffs massively for international products. Have you thought about that? As there going to be a big tariff put on this product so that, it won't be nearly as attractive to your customer to be importing this item or to be importing it here. Maybe they'll decide to go to Europe, or maybe they'll decide to go to who knows where. I've got a big concern about that. The Port of Olympia, as long as I've been following it, which has been for about 15 years, has made a number of really poor decisions when it comes to investments. And the way I see it, this is basically a non-viable marine terminal. I don't see that it follows the structure that other ports in the state of Washington do in terms of, being able to attract cargo, being able to make, it's not about profit necessarily, but it's about breaking even at least. And we haven't been doing that as long as I've followed the port. And it really bothers me to think about, this sort of cart before the horse that you guys are considering when you have a product, you're very excited about it because, I've always seen the Port of Olympia very sort of desperate to get a profit-making thing at the marine terminal. So you get very excited about these kinds of options to do something like this. And then you buy a crane, or you put in a fuel dock, or you buy rail cars, or, we buy $2 million log loaders for Weyerhaeuser so they can, make the profits off of it. I mean, there's just so many things here at the Port of Olympia that have bothered me over the years in terms of why you don't make better economic decisions. And this really clearly seems like one to me, because without a contract, they can do anything they want. And the fact that you only do a per shipment, agreement, and that there's a two-pronged thing here. They want the mill to give them a contract, and they want your warehouse to be built before they're really going to agree to this. And that kind of feeling of like all the assumptions you're making, and then the threat of the time that you're talking about. Well, we have to decide this now because, there's a threat that they'll take their business someplace else. They could do that anyway, but there's no guarantee here for this. I think that's poor decision making if you make, a big capital expenditure, which frankly is not what I want to see the Port Peninsula become. I don't want it to see a big warehouse. I mean, it's one thing to put huge warehouses out in Tumwater, I don't know, those are a problem too, but putting one down in our waterfront to service a product that we may or may not have, and it may be very temporary, that seems like a poor decision. I don't want to see this happen. Let's see, what else? Now it's $4 million. I thought it was $3 million when you were talking about it before. I'm also concerned in some of I think this was something that you guys made up. It was it's called the cover memo for this operation. And you say that since 2008, the marine terminal's main cargo was log exports, which on the terms the port originally agreed to, turned out not to be a sustainable long-term business model. I mean, this is the only thing we have. We've been doing logs for a very long time, and it isn't a good long-term sustainable option. But now we're talking about having yet another one that, we don't even know whether we're going to have it, whether it's going to be making us money, whether there'll be new tariffs. There's so many questions about this. I just think you really need to slow this down. I think you're really putting the cart before the horse, and you don't have all the data that you need to make this decision. It's kind of hopes and fears and assumptions. And I think you need to have more than that to make these decisions these days. There's been too many mistakes down here. And I don't think we should continue to keep making these mistakes just because we're a bit desperate. And one more thing, the sustainability of a product that comes from South America, when we have logs sitting out here that make paper and we're sending those to Southeast Asia, but we're importing things from so far away to come to, to the West Coast to make paper. I mean, that to me is just a sustainability boondoggle. Like, I can't even kind of believe that in our own marine terminal, we've got these logs sitting here, but we're shipping them so far away and we're bringing in a product that we could be making that same thing out of. To me, it's a great irony. So anyway, and then the sustainability also of the product of eucalyptus. There's a lot of issues that I've, noticed as we started looking into the environmental sustainability of what's going on in South America, relative to, having plantations of eucalyptus trees in a place where we should be restoring forests, for the entire, focus of the earth. Lot of questions. And I hope that you'll really, really seriously, I hope the commissioners are asking these questions. I don't like to see just the public asking these questions. And I really want to see the commissioners saying, there's a lot of issues here. Are we really making the right decision? Not just sort of having this be a given. It's not a given at this point. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. We don't have anyone online. We can move on to John Cezanne.
Is there, responses?
Yeah, I would stop.
Yeah. Well, I didn't.
So, well, I'll just say first that, I have no interest or really, I don't want to try to second guess what previous commissions have done, has done at the port in the past. This commission that we have here today, we're playing with the cards we've been dealt over the past 100 years. And so we have to make the best decisions that we can. And we appreciate all of the input that we're going to receive here this evening and what we've been receiving over the past few months that we've been talking about this. I know as this commissioner, we have had several conversations about it. I have asked questions about it. And I think I personally am comfortable that it's coming to the commission for a decision for the planning and engineering of this project on Tuesday. And, we'll see how the rest of the commission feels on Tuesday. And it's really a commission decision, and I will be comfortable with whatever that is. So.
And just to piggyback off that, Commissioner Eyal, we have been talking about this for months now. It has been several conversations. It's been moved several times on the calendar up to the point of tonight where we could have a town hall before the action item and voting on it to get real public feedback.
I will say that commissioners have been asking questions. Part of the challenge with the marine terminal is it's a very competitive world of break bulk cargo, and some of this is confidential business information on some of the details about the costs and the customer and things. And so there's things that we don't feel comfortable from a competitive vantage point of articulating in public meetings, but the commissioners have been asking questions about those. So.
Make a quick point to one thing she said.
Sure. Could you identify yourself?
Yes, Richard Korn, thank you. I just want to remind Miss Lindsay and everybody else that's been around long enough, 15 years or more, that we went through this entire process once before. And that warehouse at that time was more or less approved. And we did lose a contract at that point. But did we have this warehouse, Susanna would have found us a long time ago and we'd be in the black already. And I just think it's a moneymaker. It's a great revenue source. I don't understand why anybody would think of any non-industrial use for an industrial zone. They're not making more industrial land, especially on any waterfronts. And it's in the public domain. That is a complete and utter blessing, because not all waterfront areas are in the public domain, and it is just an absolute pillar and foundation of this community, and it is a complete gem. So I really am so happy that this is coming along, and I'd love to see it happen. Thank you.
And I guess to respond to another question you raised, tariffs are obviously very much on our minds. I think we'll be watching that very carefully. I think one of the considerations we've looked at is what's likely to have tariffs placed upon it. If the goal is to support manufacturing in the US, then hopefully there wouldn't be tariffs or tariffs that are too high on raw goods, or raw materials. And that's what this is, it's pulp paper. It's something that is then manufactured into a product in the US. So we'll see. Again, we have no idea. We don't know. I think one of the things that I did note is this customer, Suzano, has been shipping things to Philadelphia for 14 years and increasing increasing the amount that they've shipped through there. And that was during a previous administration where they also had tariffs as a primary economic policy, and it didn't dissuade Suzano from continuing to ship through that port. So anyway, but we are thinking about it, and happy to have conversations with the commissioners about it as well. Okay. Mr. Cezanne.
I think a lot of my questions have already been addressed here earlier, but one thing that I think that is on my mind that I think is worrisome is that we're just in the initial stages of the cleanup and getting the samples and figuring that all out. And we have no idea at this point how much that's going to cost. And I think it's kind of irresponsible at this stage of the game to commit so much money when we're in a situation where we don't know how much, is on the horizon. So I'd like any of the commissioners maybe address that.
Yes, I hear you, John. I share your concerns, and I understand, we're gonna have to look into that with the master planning process.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to that.
I can jump in. So I oversee the capital assets program. And part of my job since I came here is to really look at ways we can bolster profits for the port. We have to operate under the assumption that we are going to be here, however long that's going to be. But, we have to plan that if we're going to be doing these projects, everything we do costs money, right? So whether we're building a building or restoring Bud Inlet or anything like that. So if we can really focus, or I guess it's been my focus since I came on board, to really look at these opportunities to invest in the port smartly. I mean, obviously, there are cases where we've made a business choice that didn't pan out like we thought it would. So we are, to your guys' point, we are very critically looking at these. And so I just want to say that, from a capital assets program aspect, we do have to operate with the assumption that we'll be here. And to do that, we want to make sure we're generating as much profit as possible so that the port is sustainable so that we can take on some of these bigger legacy projects.
I will say too, the cleanup is in its own way sort of a unique beast in that it's all about, it's being cleaned up under a law that also talks about how you're supposed to pay for the cleanup. And the law, we're lucky that we're a local government, and so we're eligible for grant funding from the Department of Ecology, and we've been taking advantage of that. So it reimburses us for up to 50% of the cost that we've been incurring. But then the law pretty much says, the quote unquote, the polluter pays. And so, it's our obligation then to go find those who are also responsible for contamination out there. The port has some liability as a landowner and as having been a landlord for some entities, but they're also the entities that did the actual polluting and their successor businesses that we now need to go to and talk to about having them contribute to the cost of the cleanup. So that's part of what we'll be doing over the next few years. And we don't know yet, because we haven't finished all the sampling, how much the cleanup is going to cost. So, as we get closer to understanding what that number is, we'll be trying to build up the sort of cache of people who will contribute and help pay money as well.
One real quick question about that. I
Sure.
thought Cascade Pole would be one of the major, toxic polluters in this case. Wouldn't they basically released from that obligation?
Yeah, and really the Cascade Pole is, we cleaned up the majority of the contamination associated with them, and we did, I believe, release them and the Department of Ecology released them from any further liability associated with that. But if you look historically, There were a lot of other wood treating operations around. There was one over at West Bay, International Paper operated down sort of south on East Bay. And they have contributed to the sort of wood treating product related contamination. And there's a lot of contamination that we're discovering near outfalls. So things get, from storm drains get poured out into the areas right near the storm drains, and those are some of the most contaminated. So we'll be talking to folks like the city of Olympia about what's coming out of those storm drains. So there's a lot more to come, and we're happy to have special town halls on the Butt Inlet cleanup and what we're finding. We're close to getting the final package of results for the sampling in East Bay, and happy to share that and share with the community. Yeah.
The town hall on that subject.
Okay.
Is really important.
Yeah, we'll do it.
I will just add one final thing there, I guess, is that, I think you've probably heard that the commission, we kind of here a few meetings ago talked about priorities and of course the Butt Inlet project, the cleanup project is a top priority for us. And so the Butt Inlet cleanup, the master planning for the peninsula, but in concert with that, we also have to make sure that the rest of our lines of business are operating as efficiently as they possibly can. So we can't just ignore them. So that's why I think this the warehouse thing that's come up is just a part of that. A part of that, and so we'll see how that turns out on Tuesday.
Okay. The next person on my list is Mr. Jacobs.
I'd like to say something. Whoops. Bob Jacob, 720 Governor Stevens. How does this thing work? Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'd like to say something positive, but I just think this is a very uncomfortable situation for us, the members of the public, to be involved in. We need the full analysis, all the details of this proposal. We are nowhere near that. A brief oral presentation and then asking us to comment is just ridiculous. I mean, it's not, this is not a serious process. I gotta say it. We have people that ran for this commission on the basis of promises of transparency. This is anything but transparent. You flop out a few details and ask for comments. Give me a break. But on the basis of what I've heard, and right off the top, I've scribbled a couple of notes here. This is a big investment, $4 million. Talk to any investment advisor and they'll say, never invest in anything on a rush basis. If somebody comes to you with a great deal, but you got to have the money right now, that's just doesn't happen. Another thought, public bodies should not invest in risky ventures. That's just a fact. This looks like gambling, not investing. We hope and we guess and we can't really tie anything down, but we want to go ahead and put $4 million out there and, oh, it's only temporary, but costs $500,000 to take it down. I really look forward to a full analysis of this proposal so I could make a rational comment on it. But with what we've got now, it just doesn't look serious. I don't know what you're thinking.
Alex, would you be able to get the presentation sent out as soon as possible after this meeting so it can be reviewed and we can start to get some public comment as soon as possible? That would be the intent here. And if you have any other suggestions, Bob, please let us know.
Hey, so that's the last on my list. Were there more people who signed up? Thank you, Karen.
I'd like to make a comment. Me too.
Great.
Thank you. So my name is Stephen King. I heard a lot of talk about the Butt Inlet cleanup project and not knowing costs and everything. I think it's there are easy ways to find the cost on that. I think the warehouse, this extra warehouse is actually a good idea. Industrial zone, we have a lot of dirt we got to clean in the Bud Inlet. Where are we going to ship that dirt? Why do we need to ship it? You know, if we have an underutilized warehouse space right next to the waterfront where we're dredging material, it's a great opportunity to reduce costs in transportation and create an area where we can actually clean the dirt ourselves. So we're taking, I heard Ms. Smith mention about 50% of the cost being subsidized by grants. What better way to use that money that's subsidizing our cost to put it towards something that we don't have to pay for it. We don't have to pay for infrastructure. We don't have to pay for transportation. It's a great way to utilize the building in a downtime mode. So thank you.
All right.
I have a question on that, so 50%.
Could folks stand at the microphone so we can catch on the mic on the recording? I'm sorry.
I didn't want to be too formal, but I think.
No, we can't catch on the recording.
So
About that 50% investment or subsidization, I guess is what you were talking about. Is that a thing or is that a prediction?
Yeah, it's called a remedial action grant.
And you have it?
Technology. We have it for the $22 million we spent thus far. So roughly 11 million has been reimbursed by the Department of Ecology.
And can you talk about what it means to use that warehouse for cleaning dirt? I'm not clear on what that means.
So I own a cleaning company. We offer a service.
is it something you guys are doing?
Something he was talking about.
So to answer your question, so there are products out there that are derived from naturally occurring materials that will clean hydrocarbons, inorganic solids out of soil. These are the issues that we have in our current soil. We can do that simply by introducing it to the dirt, aerating the dirt, letting it sit, letting nature take its course, which is a great way to clean the dirt, keep our topsoil healthy rather than shipping it off. Dirt is not worth a lot, but there is value to it. A lot of construction projects are planned throughout the state. A lot of these projects are going to need fill dirt. So this is another way to offset using revenue with material that we have right here.
So here, this is an idea.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So next on the list is Richard Corey.
That's Corin, KORN, by the way. I pretty much said most of what was on my mind in my response earlier, but I would just like to point out, just in general, the way the marine terminal I see as revenue for everything that the port does. And it may not show above board profits on the statistic sheets, but it still funds the general fund and it gives the port the ability to do a lot of the things they want to do. And the very limited taxes, I think my house in town, when I last checked, that was about $45 a year. And I think I get way more value out of that just in walking my dog by the marina. But I think that our community, I would like to remind our community that the profit from my point of view, is our paychecks. And there's a bunch of us, and these are not McDonald's jobs. These are outstanding, probably the best blue collar job I could think of. And I would say just the revenue that I've turned over to Thurston County, City of Olympia, et cetera, and so on, probably could represent quite a bit of revenue to this community. And I'm just one of many. Weyerhaeuser employs many, many people down here. I'm in contact with large amounts of truck drivers every day. They all take home pretty good wages. So I think this port is a great profit maker. And I think it's great that the community wants to make sure that the port doesn't waste money. And I really appreciate the public input, but I have to say overall that it's a benefit to our community. And I just kind of get a little bit, my feelings hurt when it seems like people want to see the port fail or want to shut the marine terminal down because they think it's dirty and industrial, or they just don't like it. I just don't know what else would generate that kind of, you know, input to our community. That it's all money from outside. It's not us passing money back and forth to each other. This all comes into our community. And at a time where the economy is kind of dicey, I think it's just so vital, especially to me personally. I think to everybody in this region, actually, but certainly the county. That's about all I got to say. Thanks very much.
Next on the list, and I know you want to, but I thought I'd go with the list first, and Michael Cade, you wanted to.
Yeah, thank you very much. Michael Cade. Actually live at 3526 Holiday Drive, Southeast in Olympia, but I'm also the executive director of the Economic Development Council. I wasn't planning on providing comments to you this evening. I wanted to come down and listen and learn, find out about the project, kind of listen to the comments from the commissioners. But I thought I just kind of was just struck by the notion that I felt compelled to kind of talk about some things about this project. One is, and it was this afternoon, I was talking to a fairly large group of individuals about the local economy and how things operate in the community development that goes on in Thurston County. And what struck me was, so I've been here doing my job for about 20 years here. So 20 years I've been coming down to the port and talking about different projects. And 20 years I've been talking about how the port returns a value to the residents of Thurston County. But what struck me today was I was talking to folks was the notion that your small cities grants program, and you don't get a lot of press for that. You don't get a lot of kudos for that, but those actually generate huge value in the rural communities of Thurston County. I don't think you truly realize what happens with those dollars. So I started thinking about where those dollars come from and how you generate those dollars to do that. I think about the community of Bucota and what they've been able to do, and Tenino with their sidewalks, and Yelm with their sidewalks and transportation systems, and Rainier. And it's very impressive. It does not happen in other communities in Washington State. I know that for a fact. So I was sitting, listening to this, and your discussion should be thanked for your conversation tonight. I appreciate you bringing this concept to the community. Economic development is not easy. I don't think I've ever done an economic development job where I haven't been criticized or pushed around mentally, and a variety of kind of recipient of a lot of criticism about, well, those aren't good jobs. Those aren't the jobs that we want. But when you start talking about investment into Thurston County and the ability to use a resource that you have and the assets that you have and create another asset that creates opportunities, I thank you for that conversation that you're having this evening. And the other thing I just kind of leave you with is the notion of trust. I trust this commission, and I trust the staff to do the fiscal and deep analysis. And I appreciate you reporting it out to the community. But I would remind you also, as you report out to that, think in terms of how you impact the rest of Thurston County. Port of Olympia is a countywide port. You have a number of business lines, and this is just one slice of that pie. I noticed that you redid your mission statement on the wall, and I really like that notion of through responsible resource use. But the part of that is creating economic opportunities and building community for all of Thurston County. Yeah, this is here at the Marine Terminal, and this is very visible for the residents of City of Olympia, but it impacts all of Thurston County. And I would say that you have a history and a lineage of providing those resources to the rest of Thurston County that you don't receive the mental or sometimes even the verbal benefit. And I want to thank you for it. So tonight is one of those discussions. It's good to have these community dialogues. I appreciate it. I love it. I don't come down here enough. I probably should come down here more and just kind of hang out. But I wanted to let you know that I, truly is appreciative of this conversation. I haven't looked at the business case, spent a lot of time in my world looking at business cases and business models. But it's not often that you get a payback on investment that's that quick. It really isn't. And so I would encourage you to continue thinking, continue to involve the community in that decision-making process, but also think in terms of how it affects the rest of the community. So thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Mike Pelly, 1106 Partridge Drive on Northwest Thurston County. Talking about sustainability and jobs, and one thing that I would love to see the port mimic is the farmers market. How many jobs does that create? It's been doing a lot of work putting people to work for years and years, years and years. And I would love to see the port do more of that kind of stuff and not be building $4 million tents that cost $500,000 to take down. That I haven't even heard yet. If it comes down, does it go back up? There's a soft-sided material this is built out of. So how much would it cost to put that thing up somewhere else? And then as far as sustainability, we're talking about the lungs of the world where this paper pulp is coming from. For one thing, I work in a school. I don't know if you guys noticed, but people don't use as much paper anymore. How sustainable is that? And how come we're not looking at getting Eastern Washington growing hemp, working with farmers out there, getting hemp, using that? Okay, it's much more sustainable than tearing down the rainforest in South America to build some, paper to bring up here when we've got all these logs and we've got all this wood scrap from where it's logged that could be turned into paper. So I am very much in agreement with what Miss Lindsay said about we're facing a whole new world with the tariffs. Everything's going to be changing on us right now. You guys got to be thinking on your feet here. And I would love to have seen this information you showed us early on beforehand. And I congratulate you for doing a town hall like this. And please continue doing that, but give us a little heads up what's going to be on it so we can do our own homework. And thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate the feedback on that and definitely do a better job at the next town hall getting information out in advance. Any other? Sure, Rob.
Oh, Rob Rose. I just wanted to say this is a fantastic opportunity for the port. I'm looking at these numbers. You can you recoup your investment in 3 to 6 years. That's amazing. That's amazing. I mean, think about what the jobs you're creating for the community involved, and you're going to get paid back. You just can't do that every day. And I was listening to Option's comments about the commitment. There is a commitment. He said there's a commitment. We have a commitment. It's not fully finished, but they've agreed. They're happy with the agreement. It's being held up for some job opportunities for other folks. But you have a commitment. You have a company who's coming. They've already been here. You can see the revenue that's on the wall that as soon as they showed up, port's making more money. Even after depreciation, the port's making money. That's huge. That hasn't been happening in a long time. There's been complaints and complaints and complaints. And all of a sudden it's happening. And we should be celebrating this moment instead of sitting there saying, well, we need to do it again and push it off and push it off and push it off. The time is now. And I really hope you guys take that into account and think about it on Tuesday, that it is time to move forward with this project and put that value back in the community. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Good. Mr. Phillips.
My name is Quentin Phillips. I'm on the west side of Olympia. Thank you for the presentation and thanks for the opportunity to make some comments. I worked in a number of different extraction businesses and in healthcare, and no business decision is without some risk. And I believe, and I trust the staff here, based on the history that we just heard, to have done their homework on this to make the right decision. And I don't think it's reasonable to have the port hibernate for a year while we're doing a master plan. I mean, it's really incumbent on us all to make sure the port operationally is making the right decisions. And I trust that the decision will be evaluated and the numbers will be right. But, we can't predict the future. There's always risk associated with decisions, but I don't see the risk here being any greater than any other decisions that could be made. So thank you.
Actually, Deb Patton wanted to speak and then get to everybody else.
Deborah Patton, 42-year resident of the 3rd District. What was previously mentioned by Mr. Korn was that the port did lose an opportunity for a business line previously when we did not have warehouse space. We also saw that during the COVID pandemic, that ports that had warehouse space gained business. And if we had had extra warehouse space, our bottom line would be even higher than it is right now, substantially. We also know that the warehouse could be used for other purposes. And as this one currently or previously was used for building those small tiny houses for the homeless here in Thurston County. We know that if we get some other big projects down here, like are being considered, like possibly the passenger ferry line, that they're going to need warehouse space for that construction. There's, if there, God forbid, there were another huge emergency like the Nisqually earthquake and the I-5 went down and cargo had to come in by the Coast Guard, that would be a perfect place to store emergency equipment and food and, you know, triage and all these things. It's a wonderful asset. And if we don't need it sometime years down the road, then we pack it up and send it somewhere to be a sports facility or sell it to some other entity that needs it. So if we're going to make our money back real soon, I just think it's a win all the way around. Thank you.
Rod Edgebert, lifetime resident of Olympia. I'd be 64 years. Third generation working at the port. My great grandfather actually didn't officially work here because he was just a casual laborer at the port. Because at that time there wasn't a union and it wasn't a structured industrial facility. But my grandfather, my father, and myself have all worked here. My father was a foreman down here at the port for 30 some years. He worked very closely with the Port Commission and directors on where we should go. When the current warehouse was built, I believe it was 83, they were already talking about adding on additional warehouse space. You're never going to have too much. I kind of think of I think it's Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. I'm now a foreman in the Longshore Union. So I work every port in Washington. And when I first became a foreman, I was up working in Everett. They were building and building and building and building. They drove piling, they expanded docks, they put in cranes. They moved a warehouse. And they are now the third largest port in, I believe, probably Washington. They move heavy equipment. They got their heavy lift cranes about a year before we got ours. Unfortunately, the cargo was going there. Why? Because they had it. We were too slow. I think getting rid of that crane's a horrible idea, but that's a whole nother subject. I remember as a kid at about 23 years of age, my dad was already working with the commission about building a mobile warehouse that would be on the south end of the terminal. What they had envisioned and what he went to Texas to look at was a telescoping type metal building on tracks that when you didn't have cargo, it could be collapsed down and reduced. But when you had cargo, it could be expanded. This investment, especially with quick return, is absolutely nothing but a godsend. As Richard said, there's limited industrial areas left. There's even more limited deep water ports. And as this other resident spoke about the crisis of earthquakes, I believe it was the 06 San Francisco earthquake, devastating. Do you know how they rebuilt? From the lumber mills in Puget Sound through the ports in San Francisco. That's how they rebuilt. When the earthquake comes, the only way we're going to get any kind of rescue or rebuilding materials to South Thurston, South Puget Sound is through this port because the I-5 and the rail is going to be down. So it's going to be from here south, and Olympia needs to be a focus point on how we're going to maintain that. Back to the warehouse, it's nothing but a blessing. Looks to me like a win-win. If you build it, Option knows the break bulk probably better than anybody. There are people globally looking for places to put cargo. And this isn't paper pulp that we're handling. This is a high valued special pulp that's an additive that goes into other paper products. So the logs that we're shipping out are for construction. They're not for paper. So you can't compare the two. They're two different products. Thank you for the opportunity and thank you for this town hall.
Thank you. I think Anthony, did you?
Good evening, commissioners and members of the public. My name is Anthony Hempstead. I reside here in Olympia, Washington. Many of you know me. I have my own economic development consultancy and we work with a variety of different and organizations. A former president of the World Trade Center in Tacoma and in San Francisco, and so have done a lot of work on trade with various different commodities. Clearly, the Port of Olympia is in a very competitive situation for break bulk. And it has some challenges being here at the end, tail end of Puget Sound, but and clearly there are competing visions of what the public would like to see done here on the Port Peninsula in the future. But one thing is clear, in that through 2032, there's a contract. And this marine terminal will be operating for those years. And while the community is debating what's the best way to go forward, it certainly seems to make inherent sense to put the marine terminal in the best possible position to be successful. If it can't be successful, okay, that says a lot. And that's fantastic information to have for future commissions, in that you've done all you could, but make it great to know. But if we hamstring the terminal and almost make it without adding some capital facility like this, that could allow for it to expand, because it is arguably an underutilized facility right now. This would increase throughput and put the port in a much better position to succeed. And certainly with clients that I have looking at potential investments, and on one of your charts, it was payback in potentially 2 years. That's incredible. And even 5 years is pretty good for an industrial investment like this. So I would think from a variety of perspectives, and yes, there's risk. There is always risk. But and it would be nice if we had perfect information. We don't know what these macro changes might be on the federal level that could impact tariffs and other things, but it will impact all ports as well. So it seems a prudent thing to make this investment. It seems likely that it would be paid back, and it should be able to create jobs locally and help the economy. And of course, the Port of Olympia is set up as an economic development engine. So, my comments.
Anybody raise a hand online, Missy?
No raised hands.
Okie dokie. Yes, actually, right behind you. Oh, go ahead.
So I'm hearing a lot of people talk about turning away business at the Port of Olympia. But to my knowledge, we haven't been turning away business at the Port of Olympia because we haven't had a place to put cargo. And I'd love for you guys to address that. Have we been turning away business because we didn't have a warehouse built already? And talk about maybe the last few years that anybody's been here, whether that's been true and what those companies have been and what those products have been. And then I'm also wondering about, I guess the bottom line for me is a lot of what Bob said, which is you don't make an investment in something unless you have a contract for something. You know, you can't make projections and assumptions and hopes and then make huge capital expenditures on such a thing. You need to have, I don't understand why you would not have an absolute contract for 5 years from this company if you're expecting to get a profit from this in 5 years. I mean, that would be just breaking even. And so then I want to know, without a contract, there's no assurance of anything. And the port has done this many times before. There's, you know, I mean, we have lost money on so many different projects here. And I feel like that we've proved already that we're not really in a good location in the very bottom tip of Puget Sound. It's not a place that ships want to come. It takes very special cargo to want to come all this way. And it takes a lot of sweetheart deals given to these companies to do that. And that's what I've seen. The truth to me is that that's who we are as a port, and that it's not really a viable port because we never break even. We do not break even in this port, which means we don't have a lot of people that want to come and bring cargo here. And it's cool that you found, you know, somebody to do that. But I feel like we're limping this along and getting really excited and saying, you know, gosh, we're going to have this great warehouse for people to bring all their cargo. What cargo other than this paper product are you talking about, for one thing? And when have we been turning away business in the past for, you know, that people didn't come here because we didn't have it built? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for the question. We did turn away 4 different cargo last year while that paper started coming into the warehouse. 2 of them was steel coils, and they inquired about space and steel coils. Steel coils. One was Mitsui Steel, and the other one was the agent approached us. I don't know the owner of the cargo. So we usually, this happens with every port. Marine industry works that way. Basically, you get a lot of inquiries, and not all of them will materialize. But we got 4 inquiries last year that we had to reject, and that was 2 of them was for steel coil, 1 was for rice, which we handled in 2022, and it was a very handsome cargo. And I want to talk about, if we have time, the tariff. I want to address that. I want to address what type of cargo would come here. So you're absolutely right. We are not the most competitive location. It is not. It's not the most exciting location. It's not the most competitive port. It is true. But it's also our job in the meantime to, whatever we have, make it work. Because otherwise it's just going to lose money. So in the meantime, while we are discussing all these big strategies about whether it's a viable port or not, as days go by, the port will be bleeding money if we don't do anything. So this opportunity came up, and those 4 different cargoes that we had to reject, one of them was rice. That rice showed up here along with sugar in 2022. And one of the reasons, 2022, the port, by the way, it has been said that it never makes money, but in 2022, after depreciation, it was over $700,000 in the blue. That means it provided the port $2.5 million of cash flow. So, you know, I want to correct those statements and last year it was not as profitable, but due to this cargo, we had the least amount of ships that we had in our history, probably in the last 15 years last year. And despite that, our financials were one of the best that it has been in the last 10 years. And that's because of the value that this cargo has. So what we want to do is, you are very right. We shouldn't just spend money on speculation and, okay, let's buy this material, maybe cargo will come. Cargo is already coming for this warehouse. It would be almost extremely irresponsible to reject this opportunity and go back to losing money while making it.
And isn't there a contract?
There will be a contract.
Before you build this warehouse?
Absolutely. And also, to be honest, a lot of ports build these things without a contract. Marine industry doesn't work like a tenant building schedule. A lot of ports invest in this. I would like to, if you leave your email, I can send it to you. When Suzano first, this particular company, and they got competitors. So First of all, they are not the only one. They're not the only ones that need a warehouse. When this company first started operating in the United States, Philadelphia dredged, built warehouse, lifted a bridge, because they said this is how it works. This is a major company that's you were seeing. They can go to Europe. They're already selling to Europe. They're selling to Africa, Europe, Asia. They're already established in all these countries. They got research facilities in 3 continents. So these are major companies. They were about to buy International Paper, and they decided against it the last minute. So I'll go back to rice. When we had the container crisis in 2021, 2022, the container prices, which affects all of us, by the way, went up to $20,000 a can. So normally you bring a 40-foot container here, it costs $3,500 from Asia. And if those stop coming, life will stop in the States, as you know. That's unfortunately how our economy works. I come from the container terminals in Tacoma and Seattle. So we import a lot. I wish we exported, like you said. I wish we used what we produce, like you said, our own products that we make in the United States. But at the moment, that's not the case. And it is my job to make it work as good as possible under the circumstances, not think of, I wish we produced this here, so let me say no to this cargo and lose person taxpayer money. So that when container prices go to a certain amount, these people, these major products that usually come in containers, rice, sugar, and certain other material, they cannot find slots on those container ships. It's so expensive, and these people ship. So it's not like, 20 containers for Target or 40 containers for Costco. This is, we're talking about, 20,000 tons of sugar. So those are the times. Anytime it goes over $4,000, $5,000 a container, they're looking for break bulk ports. We are not even at the best location. The last rice customer we had, they bring rice for Costco, the one that you go and buy from Costco. It comes from overseas. And it goes to Kent, to a warehouse. So as the one of the commenters said, we have a lot more competitive ports up in the Puget Sound. But even then, they wanted to come here, and we had to tell them, no, we got paper in the warehouse. And that was going to be a good income for the port. Terminal made quite a bit of money with rice and sugar, just like every other Puget Sound port. And you are right, it goes up and down. There will be times it will be slow. There will be times when I first came here, 2022 was almost coming to an end, and the warehouse was empty. But we saw that as a port, we cannot compete with everything. We cannot compete with containers and any other thing. Warehouse sinks space, and the proximity to the dock is our best bet. And this product is also, you cannot make toilet paper from the warehouse or logs. This product is mostly used for not printing, which is also dying. Printing paper, mills are closing. Cardboard, packaging. Packaging suffered a lot because anytime the economy moves up and down, the packaging 16% down already, packaging production in the States. But these are for consumer tissue. And tissue is a bit more resilient to the, if you can remember from 2022, when we tackled each other in the grocery alleyways, it's a little bit more resilient to tariffs and concessions.
You can make a lot of jokes right now too about it. There's a lot of things. So this is kind of
these shipping containers come across the ocean on a ship. Why do they have to be stored, these containers, in doors?
Sorry?
It's not the containers that get stored here. It's that they, the people who produce things need to get space in a container. So if there are people who are willing to pay the higher prices to get space in those containers, they outbid the rice and sugar people who can't afford the same price to get into the containers. So they need to ship it in bulk, like bags or some other way. And that's what comes here and goes into a warehouse where they need some protection.
What is in the warehouse now?
Paper. Right now, only paper, because every time it comes and fills it to the full capacity. And they are very sensitive about supplying their customers on demand. You saw on that on-demand delivery, how it get disrupted during the pandemic. So they need to supply this customer. They've been doing it with rail, and that's not as reliable if you try to rail things all the way across the country from the Gulf. So they have been trying to establish in the Pacific Northwest for a long time, but there's a lot of things to make this operation successful, and it worked here.
They pay for half the building, and once you get a certain point, you know, you pay for the rest of them, so you out for $4 million. You know, you put out $4 million, and they only stick around for a year. They leave. We're out of it. That's $4 million.
They never do these kind of deals anywhere. No company actually, unless they lease a land from you, they build their own facility, and they usually extremely large investments happen this way. I'll give you an example. So this is one of the best cargoes we can do from here, by the way. So for the Port of Olympia to make money, we have to go a little bit more diversified with cargo. It's not going to happen with every now and then a project cargo. That's not going to bring us to a level where we are, at least like you asked, at least covering our costs and keeping a federal asset running, maintained, ready for all the emergencies that has been talked about, and they will come. And we are not doing it at the cost to the taxpayer. That's very important. I 100% agree with you. We shouldn't just say, oh, we need to keep this open for jobs and this and that and just keep spanning. We are really very sensitive about this. And I'll give you a proof of this. We came to the commission a while back when we got rid of those rail cars, and we were going to replace them with forklifts, if you can remember. And we even decided against it. We kept on leasing them because, you know, things change. And then we looked at the business case of it, and we thought we shouldn't carry it on our depreciation, and they're going to be beaten down long before we can recover it. And we decided against it. So we are flexible, and we are sensitive about what we're spending our money on. And gave an example about the rail cars. We used to get no use out of it, zero use, and we got rid of them. We put it to use, basically. That's not just made the port money, but and it's a federal asset that's just sitting on our docks rotting, and it was going to be put to use in the private industry. So we took it off our hands. And every chance we get, we will do this. If we can replace equipment that is not generating revenue with equipment that we can generate revenue. And in this case, I will mention warehouse is an amazingly good revenue generating asset.
I
And
understand where we're coming from, that we look at how much something costs, and then we look at how much you surplus it for or sell it for. That's what we have to be looking at in terms of cost and how things pan out or pencil out, right? Yes, what it should be looking at. I mean.
Well, and the commissioners are looking at that. We've been having these conversations for months. One of the first conversations I had with Alex and Afshin about this was my question. This is a speculative investment. What kind of assurances do we have that Suzano is going to stick around? Well, Afshin has worked really hard to get any kind of an assurance, because it's not normal for a company like Suzano to make long-term promises, because things change, markets change. So not every investment is based on an ironclad 5-year contract. Otherwise, we'd all be building warehouses, right? So that's what the commission has to consider. We have to weigh that risk. We have to weigh the risk against the benefits. We're creating jobs. We're bringing more resources to the area, but we're making a significant investment on behalf of Thurston County. So we understand that responsibility, and so that's why hearing from everybody here tonight has been so helpful to us. And I'm sure we'll all consider that before we take any further steps on Tuesday. But that people continue to try to paint the marine terminal as losing millions of dollars a year. I know you guys have been keeping track of the port and the marine terminal in particular. And the last couple of years, it has been, there's such a turnaround, and it's you know, it's really going in the right direction. So as a commissioner, my responsibility, and I feel my responsibility, is to make sure that we provide the resources and the direction for our marine terminal staff to make sure that that is continues to operate as efficiently as possible, so that it is a benefit to Thurston County. So.
Yes.
I just have a quick question. Since nobody could read your spreadsheet up there, are you guys including, are you including the ongoing operational costs of keeping this thing there? Because I'm thinking if it's a temporary warehouse, it's kind of a high risk thing. If you have insurance, you know, or there are going to be a lot more truck traffic. Do you need to do any additional supports or anything like that? The cement, putting that much cement over that period, that's going to be heavy. Do you have structural supports that are sufficient for that? Has all that been taken into account? And is that in your spreadsheet?
That detail is not in the spreadsheet. So there were two graphics, and again, we'll get this out onto the email list and we'll post it on the website. One is just identifies what the revenues are for the marine terminal over the past 10 years. And then the other one is sort of a return on investment case. I don't know, Afshin, if you have any thoughts on or James on the details.
I can never, go ahead.
You're being silent. So as part of this, that amendment that's coming up is allowing us to get into the engineering of this project, where we will work out all of those details. There's lots of site work, civil stuff that has to be designed for this. As far as the weight, and Afshin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there has been reports done in the past where we've taken geotechnical engineers, and they've come out and they have assessed the piers and the piles and the structure of the marine terminal itself. And so we do have some preliminary data of what weight can be supported, but all of those details do come out once we actually start the engineering of the project. We do have a base idea, but again, that all gets fleshed out in the design, which then will come back to the commission.
But you have, regardless of, I mean, you don't have the engineering reports, but you're confident that your cost is correct?
So for the cost of the warehouse, we did do a feasibility study for it where we had a level 5 cost estimate. And so they give us kind of a low range, you know, this is the very lowest we could see it possibly being. This is the high range. And, you know, our consultants deal in this business. This is not their first warehouse project they've done, and they have experts all across the US who came in to help us build these costs. And so that's why we came with this number, is that we did go through a whole feasibility study to understand what exactly is the cost of this. You know, you have a structure, you know, what kind of site work might need to be done? Is there pipes in the ground that need to move? Is it sea level going to be an issue? So yes, we did take that into account for this initial cost estimate. And then as we go through the engineering, that cost estimate will, I don't want to say change, but it can be updated as we see things. If something comes up that we didn't anticipate, then that's where it'll be taken care of, is in the engineering, long before the actual construction ever takes place.
And have you talked to insurance companies about, do you guys take the insurance, do you guys have the insurance thing? Or does it, these, you guys think? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Have you talked to them?
As far as
was that built into this?
I have not personally talked to our insurance company. I can ask our insurance person, but you know, we do, as far as I know, Alex, we do insure our current warehouse. So I think it'd be pretty easy to get an estimate of what that might look like.
Did you get an estimate?
Okay,
Thank you. Yes, I think Carla's hand was up first.
Yeah, we have a few more brief things that would be okay.
Carla Wolfsburg. So it's addressed to Afshin. So you mentioned that this is one of the best cargoes that we can have here. Could you then explain a little bit about that? But before you do, there's another question about it, and that maybe I missed this, but will Suzano take both warehouses? Will they have the old marine terminal warehouse and the new one? So that would mean that all the products are in one place and one basket, all the revenue would be in one basket, that you would deny the rice and you would deny anything else? No, okay. So, and then the other question, and I might ask Commissioner Isle about this, and maybe it's been addressed a little bit, but you mentioned creating jobs. What jobs are these? Are these new jobs? What are the jobs themselves? I mean, is it from with the existing marine terminal staff? Or what actually do you mean? So those are the first three questions. So I'll just stop there. Okay.
I'll address the cargo. So there are certain ports that they can handle large quantities of, I mean, going back to the very simple aspect like container ports. We will never be a large container port. We don't have the acreage, we don't have this will never be something like that. We cannot handle large amount of bulk material, just like they do. Our river ports do a very good job of that. They export our country's grain export overseas, and a lot of mining materials, they go to our river ports because it's deep and they got huge facilities for that. So among all these opportunities, what can we do? What can we do that is suitable for Olympia, and at the same time it brings revenue, decent revenue, not just a few pennies every time. But I'll give an example why this is a better. Recently, we worked at the possibility, just feasibility. And for a long time, I thought we could do some small-time bulk operations here, but it's so difficult to get something like that started. So we're talking about a $4 million warehouse that's going to bring really good value per return. We were going to attempt, just like other ports, so we're not the only one. We were going to attempt a bulk project that was going to need $25 million investment just to make something that returns $300,000 a year, maybe net. And this happens around the country because somehow those miners, that product have to be exported. And some of them are good value, some of them is just dirt. So there's only certain amount of margins that can recover. That $25 million investment was not going to come from us. We worked with a stevedoring company that was willing to put this product because they were already handling it in another port. But it just, because it's a new investment, costs too much, the per ton price that we had to extend to the miners didn't work. And this was going to be a dusty product. You're complaining about this paper. I would hate to talk to you about that bulk, to be honest, if that we started shipping that. It was going to be just to reduce the dust. We were going to spend a lot more money. So compared to car, I would still love to do it just to bring the revenue to the port and net revenue. And that definitely was going to create a lot more jobs. It was going to make us utilize our rail line, but it's not suitable financially. And also we cannot utilize dusty cargo. And there's not a lot of, a lot of clean stuff goes into containers nowadays. If you look at the dry bulk ports and bulk ports, what do they handle? There's a lot of dirty stuff out there. We're not handling copper concentrates here. We're not handling ammonium nitrate. We're not handling stuff in the middle of town. This is an extremely clean product. It doesn't cause dust, doesn't cause noise, doesn't cause spills. It's as clean as the tissue paper you will be using at home. That's what they make out of it. We can't even put dye on it. When we are operating, we have to be so careful with our forklifts and stuff not to put any dye on this paper because it gets processed and it will show up on that paper towel and the toilet paper. So it's that sensitive, it's clean, and we do a good job of storing it. The other question about Suzano utilizing both, no. The reason that we're gonna we ask for a 70,000 square foot is not only Suzano, but there are other paper customers trying to come to the region. So again, I just want to iterate that this is how this stuff works. You make it happen for a big corporation that that is professional. It's not just a mom and pop store. You make it happen for them and it puts you on the radar for other people to, hey, it worked for them, it might work for us. We're a port, we will work with any decent customer. So the products that we were rejecting with this additional warehouse there's an amount that Susanna wants to increase to bring to the region so that they can have safety inventory. Instead of keeping 2,000 tons, they want to keep 7,000 tons, for example, in the warehouse, so they can more reliably supply their customers. So in the meantime, if we get another inquiry, we're gonna have at most of the time about maybe more than half of the second warehouse available for other customers. And that's enough to store steel coils, that's enough to store pelleted products that we said no to last year. Now, we cannot put everything together with the paper. It cannot be dusty, so we cannot, dump corn there and alongside with the paper or any other dusty or products that give out fumes. And we don't deal much with that kind of stuff anyway. It doesn't really have those kind of stuff. They go through either hazardous cargo or through river.
And the steel coils were specifically because you didn't have room. That's the only reason.
Absolutely. Now, this is not a guarantee, but let me correct something. That wasn't a guarantee that we were going to get that job. So, like I said, we get so many inquiries, and you will give pricing. You will because they are also asking the same question to 10 other ports. So, so you don't get all of them, but we couldn't even bid for it. We just said straight away no. And sometimes they prefer to come here because their customer is in somewhere that they can transport much more efficiently from Olympia. You are right, it's not the most competitive port, but we've got some advantages. We do a good job of when it's necessary, we do a good job of taking some traffic off that I-5. Anytime everything comes to Tacoma, Seattle, and it has to go, some of it has to go south, and I-5 truck traffic anymore. And it would be great, just like the paper, that it can come here, avoid that heavy I-5 heavy emission corridor, and it can be railed out from here south and trucked out much more efficiently. Costs are not only pollution costs, but also transportation costs are horrendous going up north and south because of the I-5.
Just quickly, because we need to wrap this up, but to address your question about the jobs, my reference was to more cargo. There's going to be more work for the, and I think the ILWU folks in the room can probably answer that question better than I can. But that was what I was referring to. More cargo means more work for them.
And we'll say if we generate more revenue, we can invest into other things, and that creates more opportunities. If we have more revenue to put into the small cities program, then that generates additional jobs and things down in other jurisdictions. So.
Is there a plan to use rail for this product?
No,
not currently. Why is that?
I can address that. The distance that it goes to is not worth utilizing the rail for. Normally, rail is a lot more efficient, but rail means a lot of volume. And usually they can't get the distance that it's going. It's not financially and logistically feasible yet. If they get a mill that's a customer which they are working on, or any other customer that is further away, they are thinking of utilizing the rail. So it's not off the books.
And we are over time by about 20 minutes. So very much want to thank everybody for coming out, and I thank our commissioners for being here this evening. And this will be on the website, and we will do more town halls on things like Bud Inlet in the future. So thank you.
Thank you.